Have you ever met someone and felt like they were hiding a secret, a good one, a life-changing one? Well, that's exactly what happened to Sarah, a community college professor in a small Midwestern town. When she met a quiet handyman at the town's summer festival, she had no idea that he wasn't just fixing fences and setting up tents. She would soon discover his real identity, a man who was secretly one of the world's most influential philanthropists. And what unfolds is a story of love, community, and the power to make a real difference. But his real identity isn't all. The town Sarah lives in has some secrets of its own that they both will have to face together. How did their chance meeting change their lives? How will their growing feelings impact his choices, and what will the town have to do to keep the secret? Stay tuned to find out. But before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you love stories of unexpected connections and the beauty of small-town life, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The scent of popcorn and the sounds of laughter filled the air. It was the first day of the annual Harmony Creek Summer Festival, a tradition in this quiet Midwestern town that everyone looked forward to all year. Sarah, a history professor at the local community college, adjusted her glasses as she surveyed the scene. She loved this festival, loved how it brought everyone together, old and young, families and friends. But this year she was particularly focused because, as one of the festival's main organizers, there were so many details to keep track of. Sarah checked her clipboard, making sure the craft vendors were set up, the food trucks were ready to roll, and the schedule of events was still on track. She glanced over the list, looking for any issues, when she noticed a man near the information booth. He wasn't one of the regular volunteers, yet he was diligently working away. He was tall, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and his hands were always moving, fixing a loose banner here, adjusting a table there. He was quiet, almost reserved, but efficient and incredibly helpful. Sarah walked over, a friendly smile on her face. "Hi there," she said. "I don't think I've seen you around before. I'm Sarah, one of the festival organizers." The man looked up, his smile widening. "I'm Daniel," he said. His voice was calm, a bit husky, and it made Sarah's heart skip a beat. "I'm just trying to be helpful. I saw there was a lot to do." "Well, we really appreciate that, Daniel," Sarah responded. "We can definitely use the help. So what brings you to Harmony Creek?" Daniel hesitated for a second. "Just passing through," he said with a small, gentle smile. "I like the energy of this place," he continued. "It feels real." Over the next few days, Sarah found herself drawn to Daniel. He was always there when something needed fixing, without being asked. He was always so helpful, whether it was setting up chairs for the local band's concert or helping with the kids' games. He wasn't flashy or attention-seeking, just quietly getting the job done. She learned that Daniel was staying at the small local motel near the edge of town, and he had no other family. It was strange because Daniel's hands, his attention to detail, and his way of talking made Sarah think he had seen the world. One afternoon, while Daniel was helping her with some technical issues at the sound booth, Sarah noticed that his hands were unusually clean for a man doing heavy work. He noticed her look and chuckled. "I like to keep them ready for the next thing," he said. His comment, although simple, struck Sarah as a little odd. "So what do you do when you're not fixing things at festivals, Daniel?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity. He paused for a moment, considering his answer. "Oh, this and that," he replied, with a smile that did not give anything away. "I've done a lot of things." Sarah nodded, not pushing for more information. She was starting to suspect that Daniel was holding on to secrets. She'd always been drawn to mysteries and had a sharp mind for unraveling them. Something about Daniel felt different, And it wasn't just because he had the most incredible eyes she had ever seen. The festival continued to run smoothly, thanks in large part to Daniel's quiet efforts. Sarah and Daniel found themselves spending more and more time together, talking about anything and everything. They talked about books, music, community, and even the small joys of life in a small town. She started to see through their conversations that Daniel saw the world differently. He really understood the impact of even small things and had a deep desire to do good. Sarah never thought she would feel such a connection with someone, especially someone who seemed so mysterious. However, she noticed something strange. Daniel seemed particularly interested in the town's historical records. She saw him at the local library poring over old maps and documents. She once asked him about it, but he brushed it off, saying he was just interested in local history. "It's a beautiful town with a lot of hidden stories," he said with a kind smile. Sarah found herself wondering what those hidden stories were and how Daniel seemed to know about them. One evening, as the festival neared its end, Sarah found Daniel alone, sitting on a bench near the lake. He seemed lost in thought, staring out at the water. "Something on your mind?" Sarah asked, sitting down next to him. Daniel took a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about this town," he said. "About the people here and their spirit." "What about it?" Sarah asked, her curiosity piqued. Daniel looked at her, his eyes full of depth. "There's a certain genuine quality to it all, the town, the festival, you. It is unlike anything I have seen before." Sarah blushed at his comment, her heart skipping another beat. "Well, we try our best. Harmony Creek has always had a good heart, and we are proud of it." Daniel nodded, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, worn map. It was an old map of Harmony Creek, dating back to the early 1900s. Sarah recognized some of the old street names and buildings. "I found this in the library," Daniel said, "and I noticed something peculiar." He pointed to a small area marked in faded ink near the edge of town. "That's the old Willow Creek mill," Sarah said. "It hasn't been used in decades. They say it is haunted." Daniel looked up, a flicker of something Sarah couldn't quite place in his eyes. "There's more to it than just a haunted mill, Sarah. There's a story hidden there, one that no one in this town seems to know." Sarah's mind raced. What could Daniel mean? Why was he so interested in a defunct mill? Why does it have to be haunted? "The story is a bit more than a haunted mill," Daniel said, his gaze piercing. "It's about a promise and a town's history and a long-forgotten secret that can greatly change the lives of everyone in Harmony Creek. But first, let me show you." He took Sarah's hand, her pulse quickening at his touch. But what was he going to show her? Why was Daniel acting so mysterious? And why had he been looking into town records? Why was he so interested in the mill? What promise was he talking about? Stay tuned to find out. The next morning, Sarah met Daniel at the edge of town, just outside the old Willow Creek mill. The mill was a weathered wooden structure, its windows boarded up and the paint peeling. It sat beside the creek, surrounded by tall, overgrown weeds. "What exactly is this place?" Sarah asked, her curiosity growing. "This was the heart of Harmony Creek once," Daniel said, looking at the mill with an almost reverent gaze, before the factory moved in. He explained that he had researched old records and he found out that the mill wasn't just any mill. It was once the site of a thriving family business that had given so much to the town. The original owner, a kind man named Samuel Willow, had left a large fortune in a trust for the benefit of the community. But the trust had been somehow lost in time and a series of bad management from local government officials, and the money was never properly given back to the town. Sarah's eyes widened. You mean there's money that belongs to Harmony Creek that no one knows about? She asked, stunned. Daniel nodded. Yes. And the records show that this trust was specifically tied to the mill. It was lost when it was abandoned. I believe that some of the information that can tell us about the trust, or where to find it, can be located in here. He gestured towards the mill. I have been working through some of the files I was able to get from other towns. The old records show that the original owner kept detailed records. They had a ledger, which might still be in here. Sarah looked at the mill with new eyes. It wasn't just a haunted relic of the past. It held the key to the town's future. But how could they access the building? The doors were locked tight, and the windows were boarded up. How are we going to get in there? Sarah asked. Daniel smiled, a touch of mischief in his eyes. Don't worry, Sarah, he said. I've done my homework. He went to a hidden spot behind a big maple tree nearby. He carefully moves some fallen branches and then opens a small gap near the floorboards. This is where I have been getting in every evening, he said. Sarah followed him, her heart racing with anticipation. As they climbed through the gap, they were met with a musty, dusty smell and the sound of tiny critters scurrying away. The mill's interior was dark and filled with old machinery. Gears, wheels, and belts were covered in cobwebs, and old tools were scattered about. Daniel pulled out a flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. Be careful, he said. It might be unstable in here. They spent the next few hours exploring the mill. Sarah was fascinated with the old machinery. Each piece had a story to tell. Daniel found some old maps and several other small journals, but they couldn't find the ledger anywhere. It has to be here somewhere, Daniel said in frustration as he sifted through papers. We have to keep looking. Don't worry, Daniel, we will find it, Sarah replied gently, feeling a pull towards Daniel. As they continued searching, they came across a small room that was tucked away in a corner of the mill. Inside, they found an old wooden desk covered in dust. Daniel carefully opened the desk drawers one by one. And then he found it. A heavy, leather-bound book with the words Willow Creek Ledger written on its cover in faded gold lettering. I think we found it, he said, his voice filled with emotion. They flipped through the pages, their eyes scanning over the handwritten entries. They found the names of those who benefited from the trust and records of the profits and the amounts that were set aside. It's all here, Daniel whispered, his voice full of wonder. We can finally give back to Harmony Creek. Sarah smiled, relief washing over her. But as they continued to read, they noticed something else. The ledger also contained a detailed map of the mill property, showing a hidden area beneath the building. What is this? Sarah said. I think, Daniel said, his eyes gleaming, I think there's more to discover. More? There's more to this than just the ledger? Sarah asked, still processing everything. What could be hidden under this old mill? Daniel's eyes were full of excitement as he held up the map to the light. What had Daniel discovered? Why was he so sure they could trust him? Was this a discovery that would change the town? Or was it just another lie that Daniel was using to hide his identity? Stay tuned to find out. Together, Daniel and Sarah spent hours going through the old map. They were trying to figure out where this hidden area could be. Finally, they found a small marking that had been missed before. It was a hidden tunnel that led to a secret chamber beneath the mill, marked with an X. They searched for the entrance, moving through the dark and dusty corridors of the old mill. They found a loose stone near the foundation, and it opened to reveal a narrow passage leading downwards. Ready to see what's down there? Daniel asked, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Sarah nodded. "More than ready," she replied, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. They squeezed through the opening and into a dark, damp tunnel. The air grew cooler, and the silence was broken only by the sound of water dripping. They used their flashlights to navigate their way through the passage. After walking for what seemed like an eternity, they finally reached the end of the tunnel. The passage opened into a small chamber, surprisingly well preserved, like a hidden time capsule. In the center of the chamber sat a large wooden chest. "I think," Daniel whispered, his voice full of awe, "I think we found something truly special." Together they lifted the heavy lid of the chest and peered inside. Their eyes widened as they saw stacks of old papers and boxes filled with gold coins. "This is—" Sarah couldn't find the words. "This is where the trust fund was hidden," Daniel said, "and we are going to bring it back." As they spent more time in the secret chamber, Sarah found an old journal. It was written by the mill's original owner, Samuel Willow. In his journal, he described how he had decided to hide the funds for safekeeping, fearing that the town's government would get their hands on them. He wanted to protect his people, Sarah said, touched by the man's generosity. He wanted to make sure that his money was used for good. Daniel nodded. It was a legacy of love for the town that gave him so much. And that's what we need to ensure. They spent the next few hours documenting their discoveries. Daniel took pictures, made notes, and made sure to preserve the old items safely. Sarah wrote everything down. As they were leaving, Sarah suddenly realized something. "Daniel," she said, "what about the town records that you were looking at?" "Where did they come from? What information were you after?" Daniel's face grew pale. I'll explain, but we need to get out of here. Someone might come looking for us." They hurried back through the tunnel and climbed out of the mill, finally emerging into the afternoon sunlight. They took a deep breath of fresh air, their minds buzzing with the discoveries they had made. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now that we found the money in the ledger?" Daniel smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "Now we do what Samuel Willow always intended. We give it back to the town. But Sarah, there is something I have to tell you." "What is it?" Sarah asked, a little nervous. Daniel paused. "There is no easy way to say this, but I am not just a handyman. I am more than you think. I came here looking to get some distance from my past and the family fortune." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Daniel took a deep breath. "My name is Daniel Thorne, and I am the owner of the Thorne Foundation, one of the largest philanthropic foundations in the world. I came to Harmony Creek because I wanted to get to know the real people on the receiving end of the work my foundation does. I wanted to see the impact we are making at a personal level." Sarah stared at him, her mouth agape. "You're a billionaire?" she said, trying to wrap her mind around the revelation. Daniel nodded. "That is not important. I am here now, with you, and it was by chance that I met you, and you showed me the true meaning of my mission." Sarah was stunned, but there was also something else, a strange sense of understanding. She had always felt like there was something different about Daniel, and now she knew what it was. He wasn't just a mysterious handyman. He was a man who was deeply concerned with helping people and had the ability to change the world, one town at a time. "A billionaire?" Sarah repeated, still trying to make sense of Daniel's confession. "Why didn't you tell me? What are you doing here in Harmony Creek? What was the reason to keep your identity a secret? And what does this mean for us?" What was going to happen now that Sarah knew about Daniel's real identity? Was their connection strong enough to withstand this kind of truth? And would they be able to help Harmony Creek with this life-changing discovery? Stay tuned to find out. Daniel sighed. I know it was not right for me to keep such a large secret from you. But I was afraid that if I had told you, that you would treat me differently. You and the other people of this town. That you would look at the person and not the intent. I did not want to be just my money. Sarah nodded slowly. I think I understand. You wanted to be seen for who you are, not for your wealth. But Daniel, why here? Why Harmony Creek? Why now? Daniel told her about how, for years, he had been living a life that felt distant from him. He had made a fortune and given it to good causes, but he had felt a disconnect from the people he was trying to help. He realized that he needed to understand the impact of his work firsthand. He wanted to see what small towns were like and what their problems are. So he decided to take a break, travel the country, and learn what real people need. And his journey had taken him to Harmony Creek. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with admiration for Daniel. His desire to do good was so powerful that he was willing to give up his life for it. She understood now why he was so passionate about finding the lost funds and why he had been looking at the town's records. So, Sarah said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about Harmony Creek and its forgotten fortune? Daniel smiled. We give it back, just as Samuel Willow intended. But we do it in a way that honors his legacy and empowers the people of Harmony Creek. They spent the next day gathering more information and drafting a plan. Daniel contacted his lawyers and financial advisors, starting the process of legally recovering the trust funds. Sarah helped him to organize the information and plan on how to present the facts to the town's authorities. They agreed that the first step was to call a town hall meeting and reveal their discoveries to the community. The town hall meeting was the next evening, and the hall was packed. The people of Harmony Creek were curious about why a meeting was called by Daniel, a complete stranger to them. Sarah stood beside Daniel, feeling nervous about how this would all turn out. Daniel stepped up to the microphone and began to speak. My name is Daniel Thorne, and I want to tell you all a story of the past of this town, a forgotten history. And I know some of you are wondering, why is this man that none of us know telling us all this? He went on to explain his background, his desire to connect with real people, and his chance encounter with Harmony Creek. He shared the story of Samuel Willow and the Lost Trust Fund. He spoke passionately about how the trust money rightfully belonged to the people of Harmony Creek. When he revealed the hidden chamber and the gold coins, a gasp went through the crowd. Many people were in tears, overwhelmed by the news. One of the older men, a lifelong resident of Harmony Creek, stood up and spoke. I remember hearing stories when I was a boy of the old mill and the money that was promised to our families. But they were all just bedtime stories, tales from the past. We never thought they were true. You found our story? You found the money? Daniel nodded. Yes, sir, we did, and now we want to give it back. The room erupted in applause. Everyone was looking at Daniel in amazement. Some were asking questions, some were crying, and some were just filled with joy. They were finally free. One of the town elders said to Sarah and Daniel, "We need to thank you both, what you have done for us. I don't think any of us will ever be able to repay you." Daniel smiled. There is no need to do that. All I ask is that the funds be used to help this town, improve the lives of the people in it, that they are invested back in community for the people. As the meeting wrapped up, Sarah looked at Daniel, her heart full of love and admiration. It seemed that their time together had changed both of their lives. She had found someone who truly understood her, and someone who was going to make a difference in the world. He had found a town that gave him purpose, and a community that had welcomed him with open arms. But more than that, he found Sarah, who taught him how to care for people as people, and not just money. Over the next few months, Daniel and Sarah worked together to establish a board for managing the trust funds. The funds were used to improve schools, build a new community centre, and invest in small businesses. They worked together to make Harmony Creek the thriving community it once was. Daniel remained in Harmony Creek, using his resources and influence to give back to the community. He and Sarah's relationship blossomed into something real and lasting. One evening, as the summer festival was being set up for another year, Daniel and Sarah sat together near the lake, watching the sunset. Sarah smiled. "It feels like just yesterday that we met. I can't imagine that we were both in totally different places in our lives before that time." Daniel took her hand. It all started with the summer festival, with the intent of helping a community, but it led to so much more. Sarah looked at Daniel, her eyes filled with love. "We found more than just a lost trust fund, Daniel. We found each other." Daniel leaned in and kissed her softly, his eyes full of love. "We found our forever, Sarah, here in Harmony Creek." The festival lights twinkled all around them, and the music started, filling the air with joy and hope. As Daniel and Sarah continued their life together, they never forgot that love, community, and a little bit of mystery can change the world. And that is the story of Sarah and Daniel, the mysterious handyman, who turned out to be a billionaire philanthropist. A story that proves that love and the desire to make a difference can truly change the world, one small town at a time. I hope that this story warmed your hearts and maybe even inspired you to make a little bit of positive change wherever you are. Let us know what you thought of the story in the comments down below. And if you like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more heartwarming and inspiring stories. Thank you for watching.